So, when a king loses his throne, what's his final move? For Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, it was to write a book. Today, we're diving into this incredibly personal account, written from exile while his entire world was crumbling and his health was failing. This is his side of the story, his final testament. And here it is, Answer to History. I mean, that title alone is a real statement, isn't it? This isn't just a memoir. It's a rebuttal. It's a justification. It's basically an argument aimed at the whole world, his own people, and history itself. He's setting this up as the definitive response to everything that led to his downfall. But, to really understand his answer, we can't start at the peak of his power. And his book doesn't. Instead, it throws us right into the deep end, starting at his absolute lowest point, not as a monarch, but as a patient. Okay, so picture this, October 22nd, 1979. New York Hospital. The man who shows up is not the formidable king of kings you might imagine. He's a frail patient, and he's there seeking urgent care for a cancer he had managed to hide from the entire world for 6 years. So his arrival in the U.S. isn't some grand state visit, it's a medical emergency. And the Shah himself uses his own words to really paint this picture of vulnerability. He talks about the U.S. consul who met his plane just being totally shocked. The media had painted him as his powerful tyrant, but the guy standing in front of him was, as he puts it, just a very sick man. It's a powerful way to immediately frame himself as this tragic figure. So how did he even end up in that New York hospital? Well, his arrival was actually the end of this desperate 9-month journey in exile, a time where he found out pretty quick that a king without a kingdom is a very lonely and very unwelcome man. Just look at this timeline. It really shows his nomadic life after leaving Iran. He was a monarch, totally adrift. First he goes to Egypt, then Morocco, where the welcome was, let's say, a little chilly. Then he moves on to the Bahamas, hoping for some peace and quiet, but his tourist visa doesn't get renewed. You can just imagine it, right? Country after country, the doors just quietly close on him. He'd become the world's most famous unwanted guest. And this quote, wow, it really captures how he felt personally. He writes about getting these strange and disturbing messages from the Carter administration, basically warning him not to come to the United States. He felt like the very allies he'd trusted for decades were turning their backs on him. Really, the only reason he finally went was because his health gave him absolutely no other choice. Okay, so with that scene set, he's sick, he's politically abandoned, the Shah starts to build the main argument of his book. And in his version of the story, his fall from power isn't about policy failures or a popular uprising, no. It's a story of outright betrayal. So who does he point the finger at? If the Iranian Revolution wasn't his fault, then whose was it? Well, his answer is this sprawling web of international intrigue and what he absolutely saw as a conspiracy. In his telling, the blame lies with this whole mess of external forces. He accuses Western governments of a hypocritical double standard on human rights. He points his finger at what he calls long-standing British hostility, the weakness and indecisiveness of the Carter administration, the constant threat of the Soviets, and even the big international oil companies, who he calls his longtime adversaries. And this quote right here, this gets to the absolute core of his conviction. He just couldn't believe his allies would let his kingdom fall because of simple incompetence. No way! In his mind, it had to be deliberate. He calls it a successful effort to destroy me. I mean, that is a staggering accusation from a man who had built his entire reign on his alliance with the West. So, after laying all this blame, the Shah shifts gears to defend his own legacy. He paints this picture of two different Irans, the modern, powerful nation he was trying to build versus the one he saw being torn apart by the revolution, what he calls a litany of shattered dreams. He draws this incredibly stark contrast here. On one side, you have his vision for Iran, progress, power, self-confidence. He writes about empowering women, building schools and hospitals and universities, even pursuing nuclear power. And then, on the other side, he sees Khomeini's Iran as a nation of murder and bloodshed, where women's rights were ground into the dust of the Middle Ages, and all his big projects were just left to rot. For him, this was the ultimate tragedy, the systematic destruction of his entire life's work. And all of this brings us back to the purpose of the book itself. He was literally in a race against time, writing as his cancer got worse. This was his last act, his final shot at having his say and trying to shape how he would be remembered. And look at who he dedicates the book to. It's not to kings or politicians, it's to the Iranian people who suffered and died. It's a final appeal, an attempt to frame his 37-year reign not as a failure, but as this noble effort that was tragically cut short by outside forces. This book was his final, defiant answer to all of his critics. Which, of course, leaves us with one final big question. The book is called Answer to History. But when a figure like the Shah, stripped of his power, facing his own death, tells his own story, is he really providing an answer? Or is he just making one last desperate argument for his place in history? I guess the answer to that is up to the reader.